Howdy, my fellow designers. My name is Sen Yi Halston, and I'm here to tell you about farm design. Like my hat? Damn great. Got it from my pappy. Born and raised in the farm country of, Southside Chicago. The cowboy hat stays on during fornication. I'm just kidding, y'all. I'm scared of women. Look, I legit committed to the whole bit. I even have the jeans and the belt on, okay? Ignore the white stain down there, alright? That's paint because I'm a hard-working man.
What do you mean by that?
Such an unfortunate color of paint I had to be working with, Now, for those of you who are a bit more unfamiliar with farms and who have probably never really paid attention to the way that they're designed, it might be news to you, oddly, that farms in other parts of the world are laid out very differently. For Americans, especially Midwesterners such as myself, we're really used to the rectangular plots of farmland going on for hundreds of miles in every direction. But take then European farms for another example. Why is it that even though the Europeans colonized the US, and or at least what is now the US, why is it that the farms and the design of the plots of land came out very differently? Well, before we even get into that point, we need to understand why it is that European farm design even is the way that it is. Why are their plots shaped the way that they are? The largest thing to consider with really anything European, but European farms especially, is time. Throughout the entire history of Europe, throughout time, land has come and gone, exchanging hands on a regular basis. As a result, the borders between empires not only got funky, but also the borders between your land and your neighbor's land. Your neighbors could quickly become pain in your assholes.
He is my neighbor, Nur Sultan Tuliakbay. He is paining my assholes.
Because of this, land across Europe would just kind of shift around and get super irregular over time, or pretty much every time some dude in power threw a hissy fit. But it isn't the main contributor to having a bunch of plots of land and farmland that are just very jagged and irregular in shape. It's just more like a support contribution. The big thing that really contributes to it is actually the European centralized mind. Take a look at a lot of big European cities, mainly the capitals. The capitals of pretty much every European country is usually the largest, and it's the main hub where pretty much everything in that country goes through. If you even look at a map, you can see the roads, railroads, boat canals if they exist, all stemming from the main city, from the capital. This centralized mindset that gets applied to European settlements also applies to smaller settlements, like towns and villages. As towns started to sprout up in these centralized locations and buildings would start to form in this little circular clump, farmers that lived in these towns or that moved to these towns would then pull up farmland outside, just on the outskirts of these towns, all pointing in towards the center. They're all kind of revolving around the town. The point of this was to make it easier to not only grow food near the settlement for the people that lived there, but also for ease of movement back and forth between the farmland and the town itself. Okay, so that makes sense. So then why is it that the Europeans then went on to colonize some land, being what is now the US, and they completely abandoned that thought process entirely? Well, they didn't, that's the thing. If you look at the states that were also the original 13 colonies, you start to realize that it's actually pretty much the same. As the 13 colonies were getting settled, they kept a very similar tradition to back home in Europe. This is a satellite view of a small town in England not too far outside of London. And this is the satellite view of Chesterton, Maryland. See the similarities? They both have small towns that have a bunch of farmland that is essentially almost kind of orbiting like a planet around these small towns, all pointing inward. Well, what's crazy is that I kind of lied to you, because the first satellite view is actually of Milford, Delaware. But quickly you realize it's perfectly believable, especially comparing it to this satellite view of Northampton, England. Yes, this is actually an English town this time, just outside of Birmingham. I promise. So then what was it that then caused the US to abandon that entirely and just go for giant squares? Well, it was actually the Homestead Act of 1862. Enacted at the start of the Civil War, the Homestead Act provided that any adult citizen or intended citizen who had never borne arms against the US government could claim 160 acres of surveyed government land. Well, damn. That right there is a deal that is hard to beat. So off they went, an absolute shit ton of American settlers trying to get land. With the rapid migration of people, the settlers found that it was just easier to divide these giant chunks of land in perfectly 90-degree angles with squares or rectangles. It was the easiest way to differentiate your land and your neighbor's land. It was the easiest way to split the land, especially in areas that didn't have a river or some sort of mountain or hill range that would act as a dividing line. Just empty expanse everywhere? Okay, let's just make this simple. Additionally, when surveyors went out to finally actually mark down whose land was what, it also just made it easier for them to actually mark it down on the map. Nowadays, it's still more effective for the US to have giant rectangular farmland plots because of industrialized agriculture. That eases it up to have giant agriculture equipment be able to just kind of move in these big straight lines over and over again to be able to harvest, plant, spray, do whatever it is that they need to do to grow a mass amount of food for a mass population. So if you've ever driven through the US Midwest, first and foremost, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Now you understand why it's just miles of perfectly shaped corn and soybean plots as far as the eye can see, in every direction. So if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on the post notifications, follow me on all my socials. All those links are down in the description. You guys got to see me rock a cowboy hat. And hope that wherever you guys are, whenever you guys are watching today's video, you have a great, wonderful day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.